Okay, so I'm going to talk about things that help me, but I'd like you to think about this, about your own research and your own career ambitions and what interests you. Okay, so hopefully you've got a few ideas, or maybe you've got papers already that are knocking about, or you've submitted them somewhere and you're waiting for a reply. We're all at different stages, aren't we? So hopefully today you'll be able to clarify ideas for papers. You'll be able to clarify ideas for papers and future pipelines of research, or at least get thinking about it, and look for suitable journals for your papers. Okay, so whether your paper be an idea or it's in draft, hopefully by the end of today you'll know whether your focus with that paper is on making a theoretical contribution or a methodological contribution, and we'll be talking about that in a minute as we go through. Okay. So, as Sir Isaac Newton did, he struggled to write down for his gravity proposal why an apple fell from a tree. And I think this is really not only hilarious, but illustrates how something so simple is so hard to explain and put into writing. So we'll be looking at explaining the implications, so the theoretical or the managerial or practical impact of your research, and also look at your own studies limitations, how far you can take this. So we start by a phrase that one of our interview participants stated to us, an entrepreneur of a small tourism company who had a lot of marketing experience and was very successful, but she was on our digital tourism project that I did with Philip Alford down in, at the time it was University of Bournemouth on the south coast. He's now at University of Southampton. He's a good friend of mine now. So he asked me to work on this project because he had the digital marketing knowledge and I had the entrepreneurship and small business marketing knowledge. And so I think that's a really useful thing if you can identify a co-author that you'd like to write with who has a complementary literature that you maybe don't know. So that can add richness to your paper. That way you don't have to be a total expert on all aspects. So Philip in this paper is the expert on the digital, and I'm the expert, if I may say so, on the entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial marketing in small business. So this lady, this entrepreneur, and I think when I see papers when I'm reviewing, you call steps that I've identified that can some steps from my own experience. And I apologize if some of these are more obvious, but they're still worth reflecting on, I think, and the papers should be helpful. So if you're an early into academia as an older person, and prior jobs have been jobs where I had to network. I know it's really hard for some people, and I think it's harder when you're younger if there's a load of professors in the room. That can be quite intimidating. So I just recommend that you just get in there and try to talk to people where you can. I actually found smaller conferences much more helpful to me. Some of the big conferences, so the Academy of Management, I've submitted and attended. Some of the American Marketing Association conferences are great, but they're so big. They're so very big. So I'm in two main groups. I'm co-chair of the Academy of Marketing, Small Business Marketing group. You could look us up, look me up there in the Academy of Marketing in the UK. And also we have a sister group, the Entrepreneurial Marketing SIG, Special Interest Group of the Academy of Marketing Association in America. So they're really two really good groups. And the Global Research Symposium, which is now the global conference, so it's the GCRME, which is really worth visiting, and we're going to be in Whistler next year. So finding a home, finding people that can critique your work in a supportive environment is really helpful. And I've had that all the way from these groups that I've been. Publication is much more difficult if you don't know the nuances. And these come with time, but also joining people that are open to collaboration is really helpful. So busy afternoon, lots of teaching probably, and there's a tendency for the organisation, the university's priorities to come first. So it's really important to keep for yourself a very strong publication strategy. It could be a whiteboard in your office, it could be a notebook, something where you think this is my pipeline for research, this is what I want to do. Okay, and keeping an eye on that. Otherwise, it's very easy to turn around and think, where have the last few years gone? And there's not much to show for it. So try to prioritise. And from my perspective, I must admit, if I'd done, my papers wouldn't appeal. It's very, very cute and very beautiful. We have the Scottish Highlands, so we have particular national parks, traditionally with the large mountains, that have a lot of government funding. But we also have areas of outstanding natural beauty, and there are 46 of them across the UK, including Northern Ireland. Okay, so these areas have small villages. They're really beautiful, really nice, special scientific sites of interest with where we've identified vulnerable species of animals, so they're protected. So, and also these are areas traditionally really not necessarily having great weather. So, and I also actually happen to live in one of these mountain regions like that, where it's traditionally reliant on tourism for income. So that might be something, the whole organisation itself might be of interest to you, because I can imagine that being fantastic, having something, or perhaps having a similar network like that in across India. But for me, I wanted to write something, a project around rural fern growth and the ecosystems around that. So we started on this project last year, and we had funding from the university, very small seed corn funding. And I'm actually good friends with the chairman of the National Association for the AONB, and that's how we kind of started. So that was a network for me. For them, they have targets, government targets, and they work. My colleague, he works very closely, the director, with Number 10, as he calls it. So very closely with government and with DEFRA. DEFRA is our agricultural agency for the UK, and they want to know things. So they want to know how to increase jobs in rural regions, for example. And of course that often comes from small firm growth. So my very small team, we're starting to look at that now in select areas of their areas of outstanding natural beauty and working with this organisation. Okay, so that's really exciting. It's something I'm really passionate about. And they're really glad to have us on board because they're a charity, they're a not-for-profit, so they are resource constrained as well. But of course what's happened with the pandemic, just as we were about to go and interview and go out to these AONBs, the whole organisation was tipped on its head, because their staffing resources coming from local councils have then obviously going to help in the community where we have the pandemic. So perhaps things like food deliveries, etc. So also the actual research questions we were looking at changed, so we've had to adapt those and go with it. And so now we're going to be doing everything online, which is fine because they have a platform we can work with. So it's actually been really fluid, and we've come to this as a key point, a critical point for them. And our research will help develop their business planning for the next 5 years of their organisation. But in doing that, we're also identifying a need to look at tourism strands and agriculture. So those are the two areas we're going to go and focus on there, and we're exploring that. So we're doing a lot of exploratory interviews to actually find out what the research problem is, and then we think that will provide impactful research, and I think several papers. Okay, so that's an example of things you might want to think about doing yourself. Be really precise when you're writing a problem definition of your project, and also be very precise in any paper that you do of that subset of data that you're using. So what? Think about so what. Why is your research important? Why does the research community that read that journal, or an associated community of that journal, need to know about it? What is relevant about it to them? That's what you need to think about. Think about what existing theory underpins your study. So I've sent you a paper with Morris and Jones, which is now 2020. It was early sites in 2019 in Journal of Business Research. This is a terrible admission.
if I want to know
It was
कि signal
about
strength
disaster
सही आ रही
recovery,
है,
and one of the reviewers'
वो कहीं
feedback
कहाँ से
was,
पता
actually, you
चलेगा?
haven't written much about disaster recovery literature. And
ये
it was
बस
like,
इतने
oh
से
yeah,
है कि
we should have
इसमें
included far more about that. So we
ये
had,
शायद इसी की प्रॉब्लम
but we were focusing rather more on the entrepreneurial marketing element. But what the reviewers and the readership were interested in was actually, okay, what research has been done on small
जो
businesses
रजिस्टर्ड नंबर है
in the context of disaster recovery. And actually that turned out to be an enormous amount of work, but very rewarding because it's huge. So we wanted to have a synthesis of literature, which we got, and of that a small amount went in the paper. But then I knew what we had to say, and one of the things we could say then from doing that was, actually, one of the problems is we don't know much about small business and its recovery in disaster contexts. So this research is really important because it shines a light on that.
ये सब क्या है
So most of the research that had been done within communities, so around community resilience rather than business recovery. And where there was business recovery research, it was often government policy documents, which were very useful, but also it was done at a very strategic level.
तो एक महीने
So
बाद मान लीजिए
numerically, statistically very reliable, but high level data. So it didn't really tell us about the
तो
pathway that
मतलब
successful
नहीं जैसे
entrepreneurs
अब
took.
ये जो मैंने पेमेंट की ये इस महीने की है
So,
ठीक है यानी कि ये 31
Think
जुलाई
about
तक ये
the
नेटवर्क
work
में
you're doing
चलेगा
at the
इंटरनेट
moment.
और मान लीजिए 31 जुलाई को
Where
पेमेंट अगस्त
exactly
आएगा तो अगर मैं उस
are
दिन बिल
these
पे ना
gaps?
करूँ तो
We're
ये
always talking
मतलब
about
कट
gaps in
जाएगा
knowledge, but what are they?
अच्छा
And
15 तारीख तक आप
have
नहीं
they
करते
been
तो कट
overlooked?
भी
And there may be a
जाएगा,
simple
नेट
reason why
को
they've been overlooked.
अच्छा
Perhaps nobody's actually interested, so check.
वो
Perhaps it's something that somebody might say, this is
6
great,
महीने का
but it's
और इसी में
pointless
सारे
because
ऑप्शन
nobody
है if I
needs to
want
know
to change
that.
plan
Or
change
perhaps you found something that
किस पे
people
जाना है
have
रिमार्केबल पे कि
not
exceptional
looked
पे
at from your perspective, that you're thinking about doing and considering.
आपको देखेंगे जो करना हो कर सकते हैं।
So,
8
for
months,
example
7
here, I
7 month
published
के
a
पास
paper with
11,000
Philip
रुपए
Alford on that project we were talking about the small tourism firms.
100 Mbps का है
The
ये
university
ACT remarkable
worked
3,500 GB
a group of SMEs on two projects, one after the other, and I was
क्योंकि
involved in
उन्होंने
the
मुझे कोई
second
कम प्लान
project.
बताया था इससे
And so we were there with the entrepreneurs, and we
अभी तो आपने
were
1 month कर लिया
हाँ जी।
1 तारीख को
working them with
जैसे
networks,
करना है।
with consultants, etc., interviewing, all those sorts of things. And what was really interesting was finding out
5,304 रुपए।
why it was important in writing
इसमें
this
आपका
paper.
7 months।
And the paper
अच्छा
took a long time,
इसमें
over a
मैं
year
देखनी तो
to do.
cost इसमें ये
And I have to say I'm very
11,000
pleased with the paper. And the effect of, we actually got somebody to look at this, 2 or 3 people to review it for us within our business school,
5,300
and made amendments. And then when it went in, it only needed one, a couple of things from one reviewer, and it was accepted as absolutely fine, which I've never had before. So it's just worth taking the time. Okay, so put the link there, and I can send it to you later. But the article is there. But what we're saying there, we took a lot of time to explain why this paper is important, what the contribution is, because it's a 4-star, it's high impact, it's over 6, the impact for tourism management. So, what I found after doing a really in-depth literature review with Philip was that there's an awful lot of papers about how entrepreneurs a few years ago with e-commerce, and then the terminology's changed, hasn't it? We've had e-business, e-marketing, now it's digital marketing and social media. So going through all of these and categorising these, you can do a really good categorical literature review, it's really helpful. We found that actually nobody had a solution. Everyone was saying, wow, these entrepreneurs, they need help. And there was nothing there to say, well, what can you do to help? But this project that Philip had got funding for with his colleagues in the University of Bournemouth really gave us the opportunity to see actually how do they learn, what can we learn from it, and how can we progress that, and what can we publish around that people can take away. And so that's what we did. We provided a model. Okay, so now we're talking about the identification of journals. So you're thinking about publishing. Where do you want to publish? So I am associate editor on the Journal of Research and Marketing and Entrepreneurship, and that's becoming a B journal in the list in Australia and New Zealand. So that's really good. So we accept a lot of global papers, and we get a lot of interest from India and other regions, other countries and regions. But sometimes we get papers that are just a bit off topic. And then really they can get rejected or disrejected for that because they just don't fit the journal. So have a good look at the journal website. Have a look at the sort of papers they accept, because some journals historically, incorrectly in my opinion perhaps, focus on one type or have a preference for one type of paper, maybe the preference for qualitative or maybe the preference for quantitative, or they don't like family business research or something like that. Read the journal's scope, so what it covers, and look at the journal editorial review board. That's really interesting to see who's on there, because if it's a very big journal, there will be some associate or sub-editors as handling editors, not necessarily the editor. So have a look at that. Get a flavour of what they're doing and what they're interested in. That's really helpful too. It's useful to look out for special issues. So when I started out, finished my PhD in 2009, and I got quite a lot of publications out and quickly. And the reason I was doing that and how I was doing that was going to conferences that had special issues associated with them. And so it was often published quicker and could allow your topic to be in a different journal. So, for example, Journal of Business Research was a special issue on entrepreneurial marketing. So that helped that the journal was already predisposed for that to be interesting to them, because there was a special issue on it. And it was also from a conference. The area of disaster recovery was an aside, if you like. It was a context that we were looking at as why entrepreneurial marketing is different in that context, which it is, very different. Another example would be one of my PhD students submitted to Journal of Small Business and Economics on SME internationalisation, and that wouldn't necessarily be a core of what they normally look at. So those are just examples. So start to review the journals if you can. That's really helpful, because when you see what you're asked to talk about and discuss as a measure for a journal, you realise when you're writing a paper what they're going to be looking at and commenting on. Okay. So that's really important. So do offer. So if any of you are interested in becoming a reviewer for the Journal of Research and Marketing and Entrepreneurship, we are really looking for some excellent reviewers. So do email myself if you're interested. That would be good. Reviewing is enlightening in many ways, yeah, and it's interesting. Sometimes when you review for the 4-star journals, as I've been doing more recently, I find they're kind of more lenient in some areas that I didn't expect them to. I find things come to me that I perhaps would have rejected, and I think sometimes it's perhaps, I've found with marketing in particular, that marketing seems to be something maybe an entrepreneurship journal may not know so well and they're not so sure of. So they might not spot a weaker paper or one that needs development in the same way. So it's interesting to see what comes across your desk. Okay, that really helps. It also helps in your career, because you're giving back as well. You're giving back to others, and you're supporting them and supporting other researchers, which is really important. Okay, and the access to an editorial role, or you could start by being an editor of a special issue, which is what I did with the journal, JRME, I was talking about. Okay. I apologise for any pinning noises, that's my emails dropping in. Shows how busy I am. Anyway, do's of publishing. If you're working on your PhD, publish while you progress. Now, I've tried to say this to my PhD students that it hasn't always worked, but it would work for me. It's really, really important if you can. The trouble is, if you do an entire PhD, when you look back at something, you can't identify what you want to publish. And if you publish and go to conferences and get feedback, then your work is developing as you're going on, and you're getting feedback, you're sense making of what people in your field think of your work. So I've had good and bad things to say about my work. You know, it's the school of tough knocks. But I'd rather find out as I'm going through my PhD than, 5 years later finding that what I had researched was valueless. Okay, so that's really important. And I thank my group very, very much of the Academy of Marketing Special Interest Group, entrepreneurial marketing, entrepreneurial and small business marketing, and also the Global Research Symposium on Marketing and Entrepreneurship, because both groups really help me. And I now in turn help support PhD students that come to our conferences. So, do ask others. This is something I've learned more recently. Go to your professors that publish a lot. Go to them, ask them to read and give constructive feedback. The professors I asked didn't know my field, but I don't think it matters, because you just have to write this in an explainable way that people understand. Do proofread. This is a huge issue, and it's very, very annoying as a reviewer. And I've noticed I used to be really patient and go through everything really slowly when I was a new researcher. But when you become really, really busy and you're trying to do your own work as well, it kind of reflects on what you think about the quality of the work. Now, if somebody's a second language, of course, that's entirely understandable. But it is really helpful if you get a proofreader, because in that way, you already feel better. The paper looks more competent because it's well written. So that really does help. And in the end, if it's going to get published, you'll have to have it proofread anyway, so you might as well have it done towards the start. Again, I've learned in the last couple of years, really, make a really clear statement about why your research is important. So problematization. Okay, what's the problem? What are you resolving by writing this paper? Put that in the introduction. This is your hook. This is your hook that you'll be looking at, which is in one of the papers that I've asked you to look at that's in the list of references. Writing the hook. Getting people hooked reading it. Because when you publish a paper, you're not only looking at writing it and getting it published, you want people to cite your work. So it's really important to make it very clear what it is that you're contributing to, and for people to then cite your work. Explain the strengths of the study and what writing the book sets out to achieve, getting people hooked reading it. Make it really, really clear for the reader. Because when you publish a paper, you're not only looking at writing it and getting it published, you want people to cite your work. Do read how this work is presented in the journal to make it very clear. This was really interesting for the writing of Morris and Jones 2020. This, as the editor said to me, opened a Pandora's box, because we had several review and revise and resubmit, and in the end I was really having to go out and do a lot more reading. It's very tough to publish in US based journals, as I'm sure you know, and it really helped me to know how to present the work. Now, for those of you mainly quantitative research, it's less of a problem, but for qualitative research, as this was, I needed to understand how best to present it, for it to look easy to read within a US predominantly quantitative journal. So I looked at methods papers to look at this, and one of my co-editors of this journal, Fabian Eggers, pointed me to a paper he'd written with McCabe theories in use. And this was really useful. So imagine the paper, well, we've got it there, but imagine a paper on discovery. Then you're doing some research on small business. So you have a lot of discovery literature. Then you have literature on entrepreneurial marketing. And then you're looking at why it's different in a disaster context. Where do you put that literature? Where do you put that literature that explains how it's different? So you end up with that towards, if you like, after your findings. So how do you include that there? So when I looked at this theories and newspaper, which again is referenced at the end of this PowerPoint, it was helpful because this is where you're taking, it's not grounded theory because we've used theory in the first place, it's not grounded theory, but you're using new theory to explain the phenomenon. And so therefore, if you look at that paper, you'll see in the discussion, new theory is brought in then. It's not there as a framework supporting the investigation at first because we didn't know that was going to be the results of the findings, but it comes in later. And you'll see how that's interwoven. And I took that, I used that approach from Eggers and McCabe's paper, so that was helpful. I also looked at Roy Sotheby's work, paper 2006. He's an eminent editor, journal editor, so have a look at that. That's a really interesting commentary about what grounded theory is not. So have a look within there and look at the errors and mistakes he feels that people make when submitting to journals. And that also was enlightening. And to be honest, I didn't realise at the time how many papers are out there about actually getting published. So I think that's another thing to take away from this, is just to look at commentaries about papers. Don'ts of publishing. Please don't ignore key literature. So that does happen. Sometimes you'll have an expert reviewer who really has a home in one particular theory. And so you're reading this paper thinking at some point I'm going to see some of this research. And then it's not there. And then there's no underpinning to the work. So again, go back to the editorial and review board to see their backgrounds, to see what they'll expect in the literature review. Another thing I found working with newer researchers is sometimes they don't put enough detail for the reply to reviewers. And I'll say, look, provide a table, put all the comments of reviewers to one side, and on the other side in each box, and number them, even if they're not numbered. Even if it comes back not in a tidy way, which sometimes happens, you number it, make it really clear for the editors to read, because the easier it is for them, they just will like you all the more for it. And go through everything point by point that they make, positive and negative. And where they've said something positive about your paper, thank them for it and acknowledge it. That's really important. And I think sometimes I've sent papers back with almost as long a reply to reviewers as the paper itself. And I think that shows your passion, commitment, accuracy and determination to get this published. Sometimes reviews can be quite unpleasant. Now in our journal we're very strongly fight against that, and it doesn't happen. Try to ignore it. Try and respond in a really positive way and don't take it personally. Be careful how you critique. So sometimes I'll see work, somebody's cited perhaps my work, and they've misunderstood it or not read it or argued something which was the very point that I was trying to make we shouldn't do. So be really careful about that. Sometimes you have to disagree with reviewers, they're not always correct. So explain, that you've looked at it, why it can't be changed, but show that you've acknowledged their concerns. And quite often, in my case anyway, when I've been looking at what they've said, I realise I haven't written it with enough clarity, perhaps a sentence or two. And so then I will say, I apologise, I've rewritten this to explain it in a bit better depth. Okay, so this is one of the fundamental aspects that you need, making a clear contribution. So I've picked out different areas where I think that you can make a contribution using some examples, and you have the examples there, the papers as well. So comprehensive critical review of theory and provision of some sort of conceptual model or framework is something that other researchers really like, because it's very time consuming to do that. And if you're a PhD student and you find somebody has rigorously gone through the literature and got to the point of a conceptual model, it becomes something that other people can trust and run with, and you can reposition research or create research propositions from that. And I don't think people do that very often. So the Jones and Rowley paper, 2011, Jennifer Rowley was my PhD supervisor. I felt very passionate from the research I was doing, but that market orientation had not been looked at in the way I thought it should be. And I was a bit cheeky, really, because I felt, well, I knew what do I know, but then I have a new insight because I'm coming to this with a fresh pair of eyes. So in my literature review for my PhD, I have an iterative process because I worked with a company. It was a European social funded PhD, which gave me a small stipend so I could work full time on it. And I worked in a small high-tech company with them, and they were marketing education software. They called Semantize. So I found I was supposed to be doing a project on marketing. It was pre-written. I was very lucky in that the university, my supervisor, and the SME I worked with allowed me to change it because it didn't really help them, because it was about digitisation. Well, they were already really good at digital communication. That wasn't a problem. So I was really looking at then, well, what do they do in these small companies? And I was used to seeing marketing strategy books. So after a long time, I found a book on entrepreneurial marketing, and it was a eureka moment. And it was a book by Björk and Fulton, 2002. Entrepreneurial marketing, fantastic book. And this described something I could see. So marketing and growth by networking and creation of customer value, just really ahead of its time. And so I then looked at different scales of measures for orientations for marketing that we needed to learn more about from the entrepreneurs' own words about how they do this. And so I developed from this conceptual framework, I looked at entrepreneurial orientation, customer orientation, market orientation, and innovation orientation, and found that these orientations overlap and intertwine with each other. And one of the most important premises was, from Grindstein's work on this, is that if you have a combined approach, say it's EO and MO, then there tends to be higher growth in unstable or volatile markets. So this was what I was saying. And then this year, which was lovely, very exciting, I've won the Gerald Hill's most influential paper on entrepreneurial marketing from that paper over the last 10 years, and that's joined a very illustrious list of other authors in some very top journals. So I'm very pleased to have received that. I'm very honoured. But it's been cited a lot. It's quite a simple paper, and it's easy to take forward. So that's why it's become popular. It's just looking at things in a different way. And the other thing to note is that market orientation and customer orientation, I view as very distinct. That's what I saw in this company. Smaller companies are really good at being close to customers and understanding them, but actually not always that fantastic about being aware of competitors or competitor action. Certainly in the sample I had in the UK. So I think they're pretty distinct. So they would be quite low on market orientation, but very high on customers. But if you combined it, they probably look fine. But actually there are some areas where they can develop and be more aware of competitors when they're making sales. So papers could be proposing something, a new set of propositions, And there aren't that many papers on that, and that's something really important to do from your data. Sometimes you see papers and there's more you could say, so we'll do a conclusion and findings and discussion and contribution. But actually, think about, can you have a new definition where there isn't one? So in the Morris and Jones one, we have a new set of propositions for what entrepreneurial marketing looks like post-disaster recovery. And I hope, and I'm sure it will happen, that post-COVID, researchers will take that paper, because what we see is, we call it a crisis, but I think the immediacy of the economic downturn is more like disaster for some, and some of the issues are very similar to what happened post-disaster. So that's something you might be interested in looking at. Hayworth, Thomas and Jones. So this is a lovely paper because that's my daughter. So my daughter is an academic as well and has a PhD. And her PhD was on looking at people who've had stroke survival in rural regions, or using biographical narrative. And part of this that we looked at, because obviously I wasn't supervising her, but part of it we looked at was people that have had disability or have disability, and they set up social enterprises to help others because there's a need there. There's nothing there to help within the community, people. And so we decided to put in a definition of a social entrepreneur who may have a disability, because that's under research and that's a hot area, hot topic. Okay, so it just adds a little bit more, doesn't it? If we've got to that point, you might as well state a definition if you've got enough data and enough theory behind you to say that. Then you might have novelty of contribution. Okay, so making it different because you've got a really different methodology. So we used, and this is Paul Phillips' side of it, used template analysis. And this is something that was new to Philip, but he had a contact that he could use that helped him work through NVivo with the qualitative data, large amounts of qualitative data, but use template analysis. And that's very clearly in publishing that paper. And that's nice because other people can then replicate it if they want to, or contact us and replicate it. Okay, so it doesn't take away the art of you as a person, as a researcher, making your conclusions and drawing data together, but it's useful for very large sets of data for thematic analysis. So you might consider the comprehensive nature of how the methodology is explained. So in Morris and Jones, we look at justifying and negating arguments. So sometimes if you're collecting data as we were post-earthquake, within the paper, be very careful to justify your approach, why you did it a certain way. For example, one of the reviewers said, well, why didn't you look at failing companies? But that wouldn't have told us what helps survival, what steps you have to take. Yes, so be very deliberate in thinking about what areas you're contributing to. Now, I would say the Alford and Jones one contributes to the empirical data and the practical findings, but also the method, which is why it's in a 4-star. One of the others might be just on one aspect of particular strength and getting a 3-star. So if you're publishing for US journals, my experience is that qualitative research does need to be presented in a positivistic way for the readership, and you'll see commentary on that when I've given you those editorial journal articles, okay, that we talked about earlier. Okay, so how to present your data. This is another aspect. I look at both quantitative and qualitative papers when I'm reviewing, so this is really more from the reviewer perspective. So try to present sufficient data in tables. Maybe have a think about where it should be. So if it's something fundamental to the paper, so put that figure or table in the text within it. but don't put excessive, don't put too much stuff in. So as a researcher, one of the main skills is actually not to overload and keep it fairly simple. Put in the appendices what you need to justify and support. Okay. It's really nice to see, for example, a hypothesis framework. That's really useful. Often those are missing, and that would be really simple to put in. And it's really good to show the presentation of hypothesis and the literature review and then flowing through to that. It may vary from journal to journal. If there's both qualitative and quantitative research in the study, think about how one will support the other. Generally, I would say qualitative research, exploratory research may come first as a precursor. Or perhaps you've got some quantitative research and your findings are very broad, maybe you wanted to refine it and do that towards the end with qualitative research. But be very clear about the pathway to that. So if you've adjusted a hypothesis, so you've taken a well-established hypothesis and set of constructs, if you've done that and you're adjusting them, really carefully explain where you've made adjustments and how. It's great if somebody's done that. You might say in the manner of Jones and Smith, or enable us to look at the construct again, we did some qualitative research to make adjustments to that, for example. So make sure that's fairly rigorous. So again, as I said, if the model's pivotal to the research, put it in the main body of the paper. One thing you could do that I was advised to do, which makes sense sometimes, is to reverse engineer your paper. So sometimes think about what it is you're presenting. You might have a conceptual model, and then you're presenting that, and then behind that, so you write around it. So put in the findings first. Doesn't always happen that way, but that might be helpful to you to get started. Explain the models. And this also I see missing in PhD thesis sometimes when you're reading them. Explain the model and their implications and the contribution they make. So you'll have your paper with the implications and contribution, but perhaps a model that you're presenting also has those, and you'll see that in that conceptual model, Jones and Rowley, 2011. Most importantly, make sure your argument and use of language is congruent throughout. So keep the same terminology all the way through and have a really clear structure. So I would, if you're going to target a certain journal, I'd look at the structure of papers that are sort of similar to yours perhaps in what they're presenting, and look at that structure and follow that. So I'm not sure about the measures that you might have in India, but in the UK, if you want to publish in the UK journals, we're really interested in impact. It may have a different term in India, but basically we have a research excellence framework, and we submit our papers and case studies for this in universities and research active universities every several years. We're going to due to have a new cycle in 2021. But I would argue that for SME research to be published, it's always going to be essential for countries and regional economies. Okay, so think about, should I say, contributions in terms of impact for the context in which you're researching. So advances in new knowledge by theory, so answering the so what, to try and convince the reviewers so they're going with you on this. Provision of a new set of propositions, a new conceptual framework, or a new empirically informed model. So as I'm talking about these, if you've got your notes there, think about the work that you're doing now and think what would be really useful here that would add value to my paper. Explain the implications for entrepreneurs or managers, depending on what you're researching, investors, stakeholders, perhaps it's finance you're looking at, or CSR. And I apologise for those of you that aren't small business researchers, but All these things apply. It's just context of small business. Think about implications for other agencies. It's really important to have. Explain the implications for government. So lots of our research automatically, if you like, has relevance to government and policymakers. So think about how your research could inform government, local or regional or national policy delivery to improve society or the economy in your region or in the country or in other countries that you're researching. So you can see it here with tourism SME growth, small firms in areas of outstanding natural beauty. So it happens to be the most important ones are the agri sector and tourism, and effective ecosystem development. So I like the term ecosystem because it's fairly flexible to what it is you're looking at. You need to define that. But a lot of research does show, obviously, if the ecosystem is very supportive of business, it's naturally easier for them to progress. And you'll see that in the paper I've written with Mari Saranta from Finland and work that we did in Silicon Valley with high-tech companies. Unsurprisingly, high-tech businesses in Silicon Valley have such a rich ecosystem of support, financial, employees, etc., and investment. So it makes it very, very much easier for them than my UK companies that I was working with. So, in summary, please don't underestimate the power of your research. I think confidence is key, and self-belief is key. We're all under pressure to publish, and I've realised that sharing that responsibility by asking your colleagues or those senior to you with more experience takes some of that pressure off you. You're not in it alone, and don't think that you are. And I've realised that we've got a new definition here. It's called entrepreneurial resilience in publishing is needed, I think. Share the burden. So ask more experienced authors to advise you, and not all will, but they're not leading the research discipline if they're not finding opportunities to help early career researchers, because that's what they're meant to do. Top professors are meant to lead, help and support, and there are plenty out there that do that in a brilliant way, and plenty of editors that also do that in a brilliant way. So ask. Use up-to-date articles published in world-class and internationally recognised journals as well. So don't just focus on maybe some unknown journals, because they may not be effectively peer-reviewed, so be very careful. And in small business research, there are a lot of what we would call 2-star level in our ABS rankings, business school rankings, and they're really excellent. There's a lot of them out there. Be open and collaborative, supportive of others in the discipline, even though when some other people aren't always. Okay, sometimes there's more take than give, but be giving and sharing. That's really helpful. This is really important, and I think some people aren't really getting it, but you do need to be on ResearchGate. If you're not on ResearchGate, get yourself on there, because you can chat about papers, you can see different projects, you can follow people, you can interact with quite senior editors and professors, some good discussions there. Sometimes early career researchers or PhD students contact me and ask me for things or ask for advice. And I'll help even master's students doing research on entrepreneurial marketing. Engage with Google Scholar, make sure all your papers are in there. Register yourself on ORCID. ORCID is helpful when you're reviewing as well, because it also helps you, because there's now a method of also taking into your reviews into account as well for what you're doing. And then LinkedIn, of course, is really important, and Twitter. So I when you look at journal metrics now, there's often an icon now on the right-hand side that tells you how often it's being engaged with on social media. So that's changed in the last couple of years. And I really realised, I mean, I must admit, I was fairly hopeless on Twitter and just learning really. But what was amazing with Twitter for me was I tweeted out the paper on the disaster recovery. It went immediately to a senior professor in the States, and it then went to 3,000 people within the disaster recovery area. And that for me was very powerful. There's no way that would normally get through so quickly to the right people in that area. So and it's great to see the discussions. So do that if you're not doing it already. Journals use these metrics, as I said, and you can link up immediately with them. So I've just been doing that now with Phillips and my tourism paper. So I've put some helpful links and papers here. Those ones you should have received, I'm sure. I've put a couple of links here. One is about grant writing. So in the UK, I apologise, it's UK, but I'm sure you'll have grants available in India. Have a look, see what's available. Writing grants is very difficult. I've been tending to be invited on grants, but again, don't be put off by it. And there's a different writing style, I think, for projects, because it's got to be really written in layperson's language. And then there's lots of things about how to get published in academic journal articles. Okay, so I'd have a look, for example, The Guardian Education is very useful. List on top tips. And again, those are things that are out there if we look. Okay. So there we go. Hopefully you all heard that. It's very odd talking for such a length of time and not hearing anything. Has anybody got any questions?
Yeah, participants, now you can ask questions.
Yeah,
One by one you can ask questions.
You want to type them? I type them so everybody can see them. Yeah? Hello? So some people couldn't hear them. Oh, some people could hear, so that's good. Some people couldn't hear.
I think we had some network issue. Yeah. Ask questions. If the question I can say regarding how to choose journals or anything, how to speak like that, then please ask.
Just type the questions. Okay, so I've got questions from Nirja.
Yeah, ma'am. I have placed a question.
Yeah, go on.
I need to ask a question that from where to start. This topic selection is the major. Problem identification is the main thing. Once we identify a problem in the area where we want to work, then we can start doing that work. That step one is a problem. We get stuck with the step one itself, ma'am.
Okay, so do you have a PhD?
Yeah. Yes. I'm not happy with my work, so like it's something not a very good research work. But yes, I did it in technology adoption basically. But
did you?
It's technology adoption, but I do not have a very good research publications to my credit. Now I want to work on it. So I literally I want to search for a topic from where like the pandemic, the COVID-19. I started working on the impact of COVID-19 on this teaching pedagogy. But now, what exactly the topic I should take? What the literature review I should refer to? whether it has to be secondary or whether it has to be a primary study. What should I do? From where to start? That's the main question, ma'am.
Okay. So you're looking at using students, for example.
Yes, it has to be students as well as teachers, both ways. I need to know their view, their preference for this digital teaching pedagogy during this
Right.
crisis time. So what they think.
Okay.
So this is what I want to search for, but I'm unable to start with.
I think this will be quite a hot topic. I think people will be doing this already, and I think doing it in the continent in India will be really, really helpful.
Yeah.
I think you have to start with the problem. So what do you think the problem would be? So what are you trying to resolve?
Exactly, the accessibility to this digital platform. It's not equal, it's not same everywhere in this in our country specifically, where we do not have a digital access in each and every area. So only it's like urban area the students could access to this. They have these platforms like all this Google Meet and all. Otherwise, in the interior areas, we do not have the accessibility to even to internet. So there is a big gap. If you talk about the digital teaching these days going on, it's not equally being accepted. It's not benefiting equally to each and every student in our country. So
I I'm actually very excited by what you're saying, because even in the UK, I'm on a vulnerable student committee in the business school, and even in the UK, we have problems with the internet and lack of access, and certainly in rural areas we do. But we also have students who are from well-off families, and they don't have equipment or they don't have internet. And so that would be a really, really exciting research question, wouldn't it, that you've identified. So rather than just looking at, as many people will look at the move to digital and what it's like for students. But this would be very exciting to look at this, looking at vulnerable student groups and the disparity between those that
yes.
can access and those that don't. And I think that would be a really, really important thing to look at, and novel, because I think that will be overlooked.
Yes.
That won't be the first thing people publish on.
Literature is not available, ma'am, for this. So how should I go for that now?
It depends where you're going to want to publish it, but I would have thought that you'd want something about the pandemic, a little bit about that, or impact. There will be some stuff on SARS and other types of pandemic. There will be some research probably on vulnerable student groups.
Okay.
But like you say, very little, which is fine, because you might be able to use this theories in use, where you bring in new theory later on once you've done your research, because you may not know what the problems are at the start anyway, so you won't have the perfect literature review and framework to start with.
Yes, ma'am.
It depends what you're doing, whether you're going to do a survey and develop a hypothesis, but I think you'd probably want to do some qualitative research first. It's an iterative process between the literature and what you see out there, and your gut instinct as well.
Okay.
So don't be afraid to sort of go out there, talk to people, do some preliminary interviews about the issues for them, then go back to your literature and just go back and forth and back and forth. And that's quite a good way of doing that. But I think that's a really, really exciting question. That could have policy implications, because then you could actually do a big project on this and make recommendations to government about what they need to do. Because they may know some of the problems, but they may not have the data, which is what I found with the AONB. They know what the problems are, but they don't have the evidence. So you could provide that evidence. So the other thing you could do is look to partner, isn't it? Partner with local communities, perhaps.
Okay.
But this could be potentially quite big, I would have thought. And be very careful who you talk to about it, in case somebody takes that idea, because I think that's really good. You'll have to delete that from the webinar, because that's a hot topic.
Okay. Fine.
It is, it's really good.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question, please. Anyone else?
The question is written in the chat box, Vimal.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got Anshu. Kindly suggest if tabular format or text format for literature survey. Right. I suggest having a survey. It depends. If you're doing a paper that is a theoretical contribution, then it's really good to have a table grouping the main topics and the authors and what they've looked at. Yeah. If you're presenting mainly the results and findings, but you just want a good literature review, then you wouldn't put the literature in there, but you might have it in a tabular format for yourself. Does that make sense? So nice reply for query. Kindly post me the feedback link. Which feedback link? I'm not sure.
Ma'am, I will be sending. Rosalind, I will be sending.
Okay.
I will be sending. Okay?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll be sending to all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't be too harsh.
There is
okay.
one question from Wasim. How to select good journals? He is asking how to select good journals.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that. The first one is please tell me 3 key points to keep in mind to get a paper. Oh, that's a good idea. 3 key points to get right. First of all, make sure that your paper fits that journal, that it's appropriate for it in the first place. So make sure that journal is going to be interested in your paper, and by doing that, have a look. Have they published any articles on that topic that you're looking at? Now, if they haven't, because what you want to do is go in and continue the discussions that they've had, even if it's years ago, and you can say it's timely to bring this debate back into the discussions. Yeah? So you might say that with the pandemic, for example. You know, that's Nirjar talking about vulnerable students. Perhaps it's going to go into an education journal, for example. You could say, well, it's timely for us to talk about this that was mentioned in 2002, say, but we now need to relook at this because of the pandemic. Or it could be something where they don't discuss it as a topic, but you feel very strongly that they need to look at it for the first time. So for the Tourism Management Journal, I included innovation. There wasn't much discussed about innovation, and that was really important. It's a new sort of stream of research going into the journal. Okay, so 3 key points to go back. So make sure it's got a really good journal fit. Explain in the introduction why you think it's got a good fit. Reference. Sometimes people don't reference past papers on that from that journal, so you should do. Okay. Make sure that you are as rigorous as you can be in your method and explain it. So sometimes there isn't enough word count to have a very long method, but in your first submission, make sure it's all in. Because once they've read it and understand it's all rigorous, you might be asked to reduce it slightly. So don't what you see as a final copy of a paper may not be what it went in as, if you see what I mean. So make sure don't skimp on your method. And thirdly, make sure your contribution is clear throughout the paper. Okay? So when somebody's reviewing a paper, they're looking at the structure, the writing, the communication in it, interest for the readership of that journal, literature, is it appropriate? Is the methodology explained and appropriate? Are the findings or results or combination of those clearly explained and articulated? And do they then follow through to the discussion in a logical and coherent way? And do they then follow through to the conclusion? where you would then be mentioning the implications and the limitations of the study. Okay. Yes, so Wasim, how to select good journals. It depends on your country and if it has a ranking system. That would be what we have. So we have ABS. So I'm not sure. Are you from Brazil? Did you say? Yeah, Wasim. So do you have a list? Your university will probably have a list for you. So those are the ones that you should select. Yeah. Sometimes though, it's good sometimes to get work out there that you think has a good fit in a certain journal. It depends how much pressure you've got from your institution, how much freedom you've got to publish where you want to. Yeah. Have a look and see where the discussions are for your work. Because it is important to be in a very good journal because it will have a very good peer review. But also, it's important for people just to read it and get it out there and get it cited. Yeah. Thank you for the lovely comments, by the way. That's lovely, lovely, lovely. I can't see any more questions. Any more questions for anybody?
Anyone else who wish to ask question? Anyone else?
Feel free to type them if you've got any questions.
Yeah. If you have any question, please type in chat box, or you can ask by switching on your mic as well.
Yeah, it'd be nice to hear somebody. No, I think that's it then.
I think nobody wants to ask questions. So
That's fine. Well, what we can do, it depends how you want to do this, but if you want to, you could all stay, why don't you all stay together as a group and then work on what I've been telling you and come back with your ideas. We could meet up again in a couple of months.
That's great, ma'am. That could be something.
Rosalind?
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll set ourselves up as a new group, new research group.
Rosalind, I want to ask one question on behalf of, I can say, all researchers, budding researchers, that the basic problem which they face, that is identification of the problem. They are not able to define the problem because whenever they, I can say, try to define it, they think that it must be explored. So what are the, you can say, a few points which you would like to, you can say, suggest them in order to, you can say, select hot topics, or you can say the topics which are, you can say, highly impactful to be, you can say, selected by the good journal. What the best thing they could do to select topics? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think people should go away and have a look and come back. Really, the way to do it is, it's obviously helpful if you do an area that you're already familiar with. But for example, Nirja probably knows a lot about the technology side, and you're probably sort of up to date in that. But you might not be in something else like disaster, you know. But if you incorporate in your story around disaster recovery and the pandemic, there's so many publishers looking for work on this that would be really interesting. So there'll be something that, you know, maybe identify somebody else you can work with who's got the other theory knowledge, or like us, go and research and find out about the other theory you don't know about. Yeah. So the paper with Philip Alford, we found the innovative theory, the mode 1, mode 2 that we use there, because that again was going to the problem and trying to explain it, and it was, oh wow, there's this theory here, this explains why it doesn't work if you don't have something like an intermediary, like a university. So it's useful to look at the problem and then go and look at the literature. So for Nirjas as an example, which you explained beautifully there, and I'm very excited about that, I think that's great. you can then go back and think, well, what theory would I need? So you probably need two or three different streams, how people learn, maybe something on digital marketing, the education maybe, but also probably the pandemic and disruption. But I would think largely in that vulnerable communities, vulnerable rural communities, which would be fantastic. There's a lot of research interest in countries that are growing very rapidly, but also in rural regions. And we have those problems here. You'd be surprised. Be very surprised. So, Wasim asks, is it necessary that a journal should have a patent? Not sure what you mean by patent for this, but if you're stuck, the best thing is to ask. And if we keep this research group going, you could then ask us, and we can tell you what which are good. Look for the impact factor. Most journals have an impact factor. Okay. So in business journals, it's relatively low. Obviously, the impact factor in a medical science journal is going to be higher. But tourism, for example, tourism management is really high. It's like a 6, which I guess is because of how many people read it, its global presence, and also it's important. Tourism is important for GDP, for countries and the economies. So I'm guessing that would be why. But any journal over the lower ranking journals probably 0.6 up to 2, 1 to 2, and then you get the ISBJ, the International Small Business Journal, that is a 3-star but has a high impact. So have a look at that. They will explain it on each one. I think that's it. Yeah, good questions. Okay, I can't hear you, Vimal, I'm afraid. You've got to put your mic on. You're muted.
Ma'am, can I ask another question?
Yeah.
How to collaborate? Like you said that the networking is one of the essential factor which counts and which can help you out in publication and your research.
Oh, definitely. Just like we're doing now.
Yes, this is one of the important way how to get in connect with the people of the same research area.
Definitely, because it might be that you want to do. I think you've got enough probably where you are, but if you want to do something, you could start doing something yourself, but you could also contact people in other countries who might be interested in doing some research. So perhaps have data from 2 or 3 different countries, and that would be amazing. But I think you've probably got loads there.
Yeah, ResearchGate is one of the platform. Any other way out now?
ResearchGate's the main one, to be honest. And then any conferences? Do you go to any conferences?
Yeah, conferences. That is on the national level only. So we do have a very limited this connect, and we do have basically I have attended the conference on the technology. So I have people who are in contact with me, but generally I have seen people do not come out with their help. Like everyone want to carry their own work. They don't have time to spend for each other. So it's something like.
So it's so wrong, isn't it? It's so wrong, because we always have time. I'm always helping other people, and it's really important. So in fact, in America, the professors, part of their workload allocation for their work is to do this. With other groups of people researching. It's been collegiate, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
a very good question is there, ma'am. On Wasim has asked, ma'am, if you can check it the chat box.
What's that? Sorry.
There is a good question on the chat box. That was I was about to ask.
Oh yeah, Wasim's that one. Why does it take a delay in accepting article to publish? Look. Why does it take so long? Right. If it's taking a long time, what you need to do is email the editor. As associate editor myself, it's quite difficult sometimes to get reviewers to review papers if they're very busy. Okay, so that's the delay. So if it's taking a long time, and it can do, I once waited 2 years for a rejection from Technovation. I think it was one line rejection after 2 years. So yeah, just have a look. Often they will tell you on their time scale for review and revisions. But don't be afraid just to do a polite email and say, how's it getting along? Some editors are quicker than others. Any other questions?
Any other question? Anyone?
Okay, so shall we wrap the session up then? Yeah?
Yeah, sure. So, Rosalind, thank you so much for sparing your very important time, and we are honored to have you in this session for your beautiful presentation, beautiful insights regarding research. I hope so that all the participants will will be benefited by your guidance, and in a time to come they will be having some good research papers on their CV. So that was really wonderful to have you in this international webinar, and we seek your cooperation further in our upcoming webinars as well. I'm further working on it, maybe workshops. So it is very helpful for all of us budding researchers to locate the good journals, how to select the good topics, how to discuss with associate editor if there is big delay and all. So it is a very comprehensive, very comprehensive discussion, and people will definitely. So I say sorry to you. I was introducing you, but my internet connection was creating some problem, and that is why I could not, people could not listen your beautiful introduction, and I'm very sorry for that.
Well, I did wonder whether to record it from here. That would make more sense. So if people haven't got it, if you haven't got it completed, what I can do is just do it. I'll do it again, record it, and send it to you. I can repeat it all over again, no problem.
Yeah, recording there. We have recording because it is on YouTube. People will be accessing it on YouTube also. We have, yeah. So I think there will be no problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Revise it.
Good question here from Raj. What are the prerequisites to be considered before building a conceptual model? Right. So there are two types of model, conceptual and empirical. So you could have an empirical model that you created by using data that you've collected, so primary data. And you'll see the example of that would be Philip Alford's and my paper, where we've used data from a project to populate a model, okay? Also using theory. The conceptual model is exactly what it says, really. It's a concept that you've taken from discussions from other people, developed in literature. So you do yourself a really good literature review and then think, well, what does that actually, because I'm quite a visual person, so what does that look like? So what you need for the prerequisite for your conceptual model is you need the theory to support the model. So I looked at for that model 2011, I looked at CO, MO, EO, IO, and obviously I had discussions about those literatures and also the SME context. So some of that was information from the company that I was in. So I couldn't produce the model without having some background knowledge to the company. So it's this iterative process of seeing what the research issue is, visualizing that yourself, and going to the literature and finding out if there's already pre-existing literature that explains what you see. So with Neerjaz, we all know she will not find any theory as a whole group of theory. There won't be I doubt very much there'll be a conceptual model of what she will need to investigate as to what the phenomena that she's looking at. But it's so valuable, particularly because it's about vulnerabilities, vulnerable communities, and digital. And there'll be quite a lot, when I think about that, Nija, there'll be quite a lot of that about possibly in something like agriculture, because certainly in the UK, there's been a lot of pressure for the government to provide decent internet in rural communities. So that probably mirrors what you have to face as well. So we actually have that as well. So that means that our farmers can't advertise, they can't use digital to promote their tourism, they can't do any business on digital. So we have those sorts of issues. So there may be some theory somewhere. So basically, for your conceptual model, you just need the right theory to support the model that you're trying to populate, and then you can get people to look at it and critique it. So when I presented it at conferences, people said, why have you got that? Why have you included that? I think you should include something else or get some feedback on it. But now, if you think about it, if your conferences are national, this is a major opportunity now, because everything now is digitized. I'm getting invites for so many conferences that are in America and elsewhere that you can just hook into. So have a look. There are loads going on, honestly. So depending on the research area, there's a lot in small business. In fact, our Global Research Symposium is online. So when I get my award this year, it's going to be virtual. But we're having a conference in August, so I'll send Vimal the details. I'd be delighted if you wanted to attend. And there are people from all over the world on that. It's only a small group, but we're a small, fun community of academics that look at entrepreneurship and marketing. And just a great group of people. So you might want to join us.
So I think I should end up the